At 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, Ethan Brooks made a mistake that would destroy everything he'd carefully built since his wife's death, or save him from drowning in it. 3 words. Wrong recipient, his boss. What happened next would tear down every wall between professional distance and personal truth, between grief that paralyzes and love that heals. This is the story of how one accidental text message became the bridge between 2 shattered souls and the family neither of them thought they deserved. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cursor blinked at Ethan Brooks like an accusation. He sat in the dark, the only light in his living room coming from his phone screen and the small lamp he'd left on in the hallway, the one Mia insisted helped her feel safe when she woke up from nightmares. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood, sounds that had become his only companions after 9 p.m. when his daughter finally surrendered to sleep. Ethan stared at the message thread, at the name that hadn't responded in 2 years because it couldn't. Because she was gone. Because Sarah had left him and Mia behind on a rainy October afternoon when a distracted driver ran a red light and turned his whole world into before and after. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. This had become his ritual. Late nights, after Mia was asleep, after the dishes were done and lunch was packed for tomorrow, after he'd reviewed his presentations for work and responded to the endless emails that never seemed to stop. This was when he allowed himself to fall apart in small, controlled doses. He would open Sarah's message thread and type things he could never send. Confessions. Updates. Apologies for not being enough to make her stay, even though he knew logically that grief didn't work that way. Tonight felt heavier than usual. Mia had asked about her mother during dinner, a question that came out of nowhere while she pushed peas around her plate. "Do you think Mommy would be proud of my spelling test?" Ethan had frozen with his fork halfway to his mouth, the question hitting him like a physical blow. He'd recovered quickly. He'd gotten good at that, and smiled and told her that Mommy would be so proud she'd probably have put it on the refrigerator with 3 magnets instead of 1. Mia had smiled, satisfied, and gone back to her peas, but Ethan couldn't shake it. So here he was at 11:47 p.m., typing words into a void. I miss you. Simple. True. Inadequate for the magnitude of what he felt, but it was all he had left. His thumb hit send before his brain registered the action, and then his entire body went cold. The message thread at the top of his screen wasn't Sarah's name with the little photo of her laughing at the beach, the last picture he'd taken before everything ended. It was a different name, a different photo. A professional headshot of a woman in a navy blazer with dark hair pulled back and eyes that always seemed to be calculating something 3 steps ahead. Laura Whitman, CEO, Whitman and Associates, his boss. No. The word came out as a whisper, then louder. No, 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 no. Ethan's hands shook as he stared at the screen, his mind racing through every possible catastrophic outcome. The message had been delivered. No taking it back. No unsending. 3 words that could destroy the professional reputation he'd spent the last 2 years desperately trying to maintain while his personal life crumbled around him. I miss you. Sent to his boss at 11:47 p.m. What would she think? That he was inappropriate? Unstable? That he was one of those employees who couldn't maintain professional boundaries? She would think he was hitting on her, or worse, that he'd been drinking and lost control. She would think he was a liability, and he couldn't afford to be a liability. Ethan jumped to his feet, phone clutched in his hand, and began pacing. His heart hammered against his ribs. Whitman and Associates wasn't just a job. It was the only stable thing in his life right now. The salary paid for Mia's school, their small rental house, the therapy sessions he couldn't quite afford but knew his daughter needed. He'd fought so hard to keep performing at work even when grief made it feel impossible to get out of bed. Laura Whitman was not a warm person. She was brilliant, efficient, and utterly professional. She'd hired him 3 years ago when he was still married and happy and good at his job, and she'd kept him on after Sarah died even when his performance had slipped. He'd always assumed it was because she valued results over personal drama, and he'd been grateful for the cold distance she maintained. But this shattered every boundary. Think, he muttered, still pacing. Think, think, think. He could explain. Send another message immediately, clarify that it was a mistake. But what would he say? Sorry, that was meant for my dead wife sounded insane, and trying to explain would only draw more attention to the message. Maybe she was already asleep. Maybe she wouldn't see it until morning, and he could… What? Break into her house and delete it from her phone? The rational part of his brain knew he was spiraling, but the panic had taken over. His phone buzzed. Ethan nearly dropped it. Three dots appeared in the message thread. Laura was typing. His stomach twisted into knots. Whatever she was about to say would determine whether he still had a job tomorrow, whether he could still provide for Mia, whether the fragile stability he'd built would collapse entirely. The dots disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. He couldn't breathe. Finally, a message came through. Laura Whitman. Wrong number? 2 words, a question. Professional, neutral, offering him an exit. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, desperation making him type faster than he'd ever typed in his life. Ethan Brooks. Yes. I'm so sorry, Ms. Whitman. That was absolutely meant for someone else. Completely inappropriate to send to you. I apologize profusely. He hit send and immediately wanted to throw his phone across the room. Too formal, too many words. He sounded guilty. The dots appeared again. Laura Whitman. It happens. No harm done. See you Monday. That was it. Professional. Dismissive. Conversation over. Ethan stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for another message that said, actually, we need to talk about your employment, or this kind of behavior is unacceptable, or anything that would confirm his worst fears. Nothing came. He sank onto the couch, his whole body shaking with adrenaline crash. She'd let it go. She'd given him an out, and he'd taken it, and it was over. Except it wasn't over. Because now every time he saw Laura Whitman, he would think about this moment. Every meeting, every presentation, every casual conversation in the break room would carry the weight of this mistake. She would remember. Even if she never mentioned it, she would remember that her employee had sent her a message at midnight that said, I miss you. Stupid, he muttered, dropping his phone onto the coffee table. Stupid, stupid, stupid. He should go to bed. Morning would come in 6 hours, and Mia would need breakfast and her backpack checked and her hair braided, and he couldn't afford to be exhausted on top of everything else. But sleep felt impossible. Ethan leaned back against the couch cushions and closed his eyes, trying to slow his racing heart. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he could still see Sarah's smile. Could still remember the way she used to tease him about working too hard, about taking things too seriously. She would have found this funny, probably. Would have laughed and told him it was just a mistake, and Laura Whitman was a human being who understood that accidents happen. But Sarah wasn't here to tell him that. And Laura Whitman wasn't Sarah. Friday morning arrived with the cruel indifference of all mornings. Mia bounced into his room at 6:15 a.m., already wearing mismatched socks and holding her favorite stuffed elephant. Daddy, it's Friday! That means pizza day at school! Ethan forced himself to smile, to push aside the knot of anxiety that had been sitting in his chest since Tuesday night. That's right, sweetheart. Did you brush your teeth already? Yep, she grinned, showing off teeth that definitely had not been brushed. Go do it for real this time, and I'll make pancakes. She squealed and ran off, her footsteps thundering down the hallway in a way that seemed impossible for such a small person. Ethan dragged himself out of bed and into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. The man in the mirror looked tired, permanent shadows under his eyes, hair that was starting to gray at the temples even though he was only 34, the kind of weariness that came from carrying too much for too long. Pull it together, he told his reflection. You have a job, you have a daughter. You're fine. The words felt hollow, but he repeated them anyway. Breakfast was chaos in the way mornings with a 6-year-old always were. Mia talked nonstop about a book her teacher had read, about her friend Sophie, who had lost a tooth, about the butterfly they'd seen during recess. Ethan listened and nodded and made the appropriate responses while his mind kept drifting to Monday. He would have to face Laura Whitman on Monday. The thought made his pancakes taste like cardboard. After dropping Mia off at school, a process that involved 3 forgotten items, 2 trips back to the car, and one tearful moment when she couldn't find her favorite pencil, Ethan finally made it to the office. Whitman and Associates occupied the 8th floor of a downtown building, all glass walls and modern furniture and the faint smell of expensive coffee. Ethan had always liked it here. The work was challenging, the team was talented, and the structure gave him something to focus on when home felt too empty. He swiped his badge and stepped into the elevator, nodding at colleagues he recognized. His plan was simple: get to his desk, bury himself in work, avoid Laura Whitman entirely. The universe had other plans. The elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, and there she was. Laura Whitman stood by the reception desk, speaking with Janet about something that required a folder and several pointed gestures. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's rent. Her dark hair pulled back in its usual neat bun, her expression focused and unreadable. Ethan's first instinct was to get back in the elevator. His second instinct was to remember that he was a grown man with a job to do and a daughter who needed him to keep that job. He stepped out. Laura's gaze flicked to him for a fraction of a second, long enough to acknowledge his presence, then returned to Janet. No reaction. No knowing look. Nothing that suggested she was thinking about Tuesday night at all. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe they could both just pretend it never happened and move on with their lives. He made it halfway to his desk before her voice cut through the ambient office noise. "Brooks?" He stopped, turned. "Yes, Ms. Whitman?" She stood with one hand on her hip, the folder tucked under her other arm, her expression utterly professional. "Conference room 2, 10 minutes. Quarterly review for the Hendrickson account." "Of course. I'll be there." She nodded once and walked away, her heels clicking precisely against the tile floor. Ethan exhaled slowly. Professional. Normal. Crisis averted. The meeting was exactly what he expected: dry, detail-oriented, and mercifully focused on numbers and strategies rather than personal disasters. Laura ran the meeting with her usual efficiency, asking sharp questions and making notes in a leather portfolio that looked like it had been with her for years. She didn't look at Ethan any differently than she looked at anyone else. By the time lunch rolled around, he'd almost convinced himself that everything really was fine. That conviction lasted until 2:47 p.m., when his phone buzzed with a message. "Laura Whitman. Can you stop by my office before you leave today?" Ethan's blood turned to ice. This was it. The other shoe. She'd been professional all day because she was waiting for privacy to fire him, or reprimand him, or tell him that his behavior was unacceptable and he needed to find new employment. His hands shook as he typed a response. "Ethan Brooks. Of course. What time works for you?" "Laura Whitman, 5:30. An hour and 43 minutes to prepare for the end of his career. Ethan tried to work, but the words on his computer screen might as well have been in another language. He kept running through possible explanations, apologies, pleas for understanding. Maybe if he explained about Sarah, about the grief, about the sleepless nights, she would understand. Or maybe it would just make him look more unstable. The clock on his computer seemed to move both too fast and too slow. At 5:15, he saved his work, closed his laptop, and walked to the bathroom to splash water on his face again. The tired man in the mirror looked back at him with something close to resignation. "Whatever happens," he told himself, "you'll figure it out. You always do." Laura's office was at the far corner of the 8th floor, with windows that looked out over the city and furniture that screamed success. Ethan had only been inside twice, once when he was hired, once when Sarah died, and he'd needed to explain why he'd need time off. He knocked at 5:30 exactly. "Come in." Laura sat behind her desk, still in her suit jacket despite the late hour, her computer screen casting a blue glow across her face. She looked up when he entered and gestured to one of the chairs across from her. "Close the door, please." Ethan's heart sank. Nothing good ever came from close the door. He sat, his posture rigid, waiting for the axe to fall. Laura studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she surprised him. "Are you okay?" The question caught him completely off guard. What? Are you okay?" she repeated, her tone softer than he'd ever heard it. "Not about Tuesday night, although we'll get to that. I mean, in general. You've seemed stretched thin lately. Ethan didn't know what to say. Of all the conversations he'd prepared for, this wasn't one of them. I'm managing, he said carefully. That's not what I asked. He met her eyes and found something unexpected there. Not judgment, but something that looked almost like concern. I'm doing the best I can, he said, more honestly. It's been a difficult couple of years. Laura nodded slowly. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her. I know about your wife. I read the bereavement paperwork. I'm sorry for your loss. The words sounded rehearsed, like something she'd learned to say in a management training course, but there was something underneath them that felt genuine. Thank you, Ethan said. About Tuesday night. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I'm not going to pry into who that message was meant for or what your personal situation is. That's not my business. But I need to know if you're struggling in a way that's affecting your work. Because if you are, we can address that. We have resources. Employee assistance programs. I can adjust your schedule if you need more flexibility with your daughter. Ethan stared at her, completely blindsided. You're not upset? Laura's expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. About a 3-word text message sent by mistake. No, Brooks, I'm not upset. I'm a human being. I understand that accidents happen. The relief that washed over him was so intense it was almost painful. I thought... He stopped, shaking his head. I thought I'd ruined everything. You're a good employee, Laura said simply. You do solid work, you meet deadlines, and you're reliable. One misdirected message doesn't change that. She paused. Although I am curious why you thought I'd react so badly. Ethan chose his words carefully. You have a reputation for being very professional. I didn't think you'd appreciate personal drama bleeding into work. I don't, Laura said, but I also recognize that everyone has a life outside this office, and sometimes those lives are complicated. She stood, walking to the windows and looking out at the city. I lost my husband 6 years ago. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan felt his breath catch. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Most people don't know. I don't talk about it. Laura's reflection in the window was distant, lost somewhere in memory. Car accident. He was on his way home from a business trip. She turned back to face Ethan. So when you sent that message, I had a pretty good idea who it was meant for. Understanding crashed over him. The neutral response, the quick deflection, the invitation to her office not to reprimand, but to check in. I thought I was going crazy, Ethan admitted. I've been trying so hard to keep everything separate. Work in one box, grief in another, Mia in a third box. And then I sent that message and it felt like all the boxes exploded. They do that, Laura said quietly. The boxes, no matter how carefully you build them. For a moment they just stood there. Two people who understood the particular weight of loss in a way most people never would. How do you do it? Ethan asked. How do you keep going? Laura's smile was sad and knowing. Badly at first, then slightly less badly. Then you have good days mixed in with the bad ones, and eventually the good days start to outnumber the bad. She returned to her desk. But it never stops being hard. Anyone who tells you it does is lying. That's not particularly comforting, Ethan said. No, Laura agreed, but it's honest. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared experience creating a strange intimacy in the professional space. Finally, Laura straightened, her expression shifting back into something more businesslike. You're doing better than you think you are, Brooks. Give yourself some credit. She paused. And if you need to talk about work or otherwise, my door is open, not as your boss, just as someone who gets it. Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Go home, Laura said. It's Friday. Spend time with your daughter. He stood, moving toward the door, then stopped. Ms. Whitman? Laura. If we're going to have conversations like this, you might as well call me Laura. Laura, he corrected. Thank you for understanding. She nodded once, already turning back to her computer. See you Monday, Ethan. The weekend passed in a blur of normal things: grocery shopping, playground visits, animated movies that Mia insisted on watching 3 times in a row. But something had shifted inside Ethan. The panic that had been his constant companion since Tuesday night had loosened its grip, replaced by something he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. Monday morning came, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan didn't dread walking into the office. He arrived early, before most of the team, and settled at his desk with coffee and his task list. The morning passed in a comfortable rhythm: emails, phone calls, a productive brainstorming session with the creative team. At 11:30, his phone buzzed. Laura Whitman. "Working lunch? Conference room 4. I'll order sandwiches." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Ethan found himself curious rather than anxious. Ethan Brooks. "Works for me. Turkey on wheat if you're ordering." Conference room 4 was smaller than the others, with a round table instead of the imposing rectangular ones in the bigger spaces. Laura was already there when Ethan arrived, with 2 paper bags from the deli down the street and 2 bottles of sparkling water. "Thanks for joining me," she said, sliding one of the bags across the table. "I figured we could talk about the Morrison pitch while we eat." They did talk about the Morrison pitch for about 15 minutes. Laura's insights were sharp as always, her questions pushing Ethan to think more creatively about their approach. But there was something different in the way she listened now, something more engaged. When the conversation lulled, she surprised him. "How old is your daughter?" "Mia's 6, first grade." "First grade." Laura smiled, a real smile that transformed her face into something warmer. "That's a good age. Still young enough to think you know everything, old enough to have real conversations." "Do you have kids?" Ethan asked, then immediately worried he'd overstepped. But Laura didn't seem to mind. "No, James and I always planned to, but we kept putting it off. Career first, we said. We had time." Her expression clouded. "Turns out we didn't. I'm sorry." "So am I." She took a sip of water. "What's Mia like?" And somehow Ethan found himself talking, really talking, not just the superficial updates he gave to coworkers who asked politely about his daughter. He told Laura about Mia's obsession with butterflies, about her tendency to ask impossible questions at bedtime, about the way she still slept with the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her when she was born. Laura listened, asking questions that showed she was genuinely interested, and Ethan realized with some surprise that he was enjoying himself. "She sounds wonderful," Laura said when he finally wound down. "She is. She's the only thing that kept me going after Sarah died. If it wasn't for her—" He trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. "But it was for her," Laura said gently, "and you're both still here." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Mia's school. His stomach dropped. Calls from school were never good news. "Excuse me," he said, answering quickly. "This is Ethan Brooks." "Mr. Brooks, this is Principal Chen. Everything's fine, but we need you to come pick up Mia. She's not feeling well." 20 minutes later, Ethan was pulling into the school parking lot, his afternoon completely rearranged. He'd messaged Laura to apologize for bailing on the rest of the workday, and her response had been immediate and unexpected. Laura Whitman. "Family first, take care of her. See you tomorrow." Mia was waiting in the nurse's office, looking small and miserable on the vinyl bench. "No fever," the nurse explained, but she'd complained of a stomachache and seemed genuinely uncomfortable. "Come on, sweetheart," Ethan said, helping her into his car. "Let's get you home." They made it halfway there before Mia spoke in a small voice. "Daddy, I wasn't really sick." Ethan glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. "What do you mean?" "Sophie said her mom is picking her up early for a dentist appointment, and I got sad because—" She trailed off, her lip wobbling. "Because I wanted you to pick me up too, like other kids' parents do sometimes." Ethan's heart cracked. He pulled into a parking lot and turned around to look at his daughter properly. "Mia, sweetie, if you want me to pick you up from school, you can just ask. You don't have to pretend to be sick." "But you're always working," she said, tears starting to fall. "And I know we need money because Mommy's gone and you have to take care of everything, and I don't want to be a problem." "Oh, Mia." Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed into the back seat, pulling her into his arms. "You are never, ever a problem. You're the best thing in my whole life, always. She cried into his shoulder while he held her, his own eyes burning with tears he wouldn't let fall. I miss Mommy, Mia whispered. Me too, baby. Me too. They sat there for a long time, two people trying to figure out how to be a family when part of them was missing. Finally, Mia pulled back, wiping her eyes. Can we go home and make cookies? Absolutely, Ethan said. Any kind you want. That evening, while Mia rolled out dough and used cookie cutters shaped like stars, Ethan's phone buzzed. Laura Whitman. Is she okay? He stared at the message, surprised. It was after business hours. She didn't have to check in. Ethan Brooks. False alarm. Just needed dad time. Laura Whitman. Those are important too. Ethan smiled, sliding his phone back into his pocket. For the first time since Sarah died, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely alone in trying to figure this out. Tom. The next morning brought an unexpected knock on his door at 8:47 a.m. Ethan wasn't expecting anyone. Mia was already at school. He'd taken the morning off to catch up on errands, and the mailman never knocked. He opened the door in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, completely unprepared for the person standing on his porch. Laura Whitman. She wore jeans, actual jeans, and a soft gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual severe style. She looked different, younger, more human. She held 2 coffee cups from the expensive place downtown and a paper bag that smelled like chocolate. I'm sorry for showing up unannounced, Laura said before Ethan could find words. I should have texted first. I can go. No, Ethan said quickly, stepping back. No, it's fine. Come in. I'm just surprised. Laura stepped inside, looking around the small living room with genuine interest. Family photos on the mantel. Mia's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. The comfortable chaos of a house where a child actually lived. I brought hot chocolate, Laura said, holding up the bag. For Mia. I wasn't sure if she'd be here. She's at school, but she'd love it. Ethan gestured to the couch. Can I ask what you're doing here? Laura sat, cradling one of the coffee cups in both hands. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I woke up this morning and I kept thinking about what you said, about Mia needing you. And I remembered what it felt like after James died, when everyone treated me like I was fine because I showed up to work and did my job and didn't fall apart in public. She met his eyes. You're not fine, Ethan, and that's okay, but you shouldn't have to pretend all the time. Ethan sat down slowly, overwhelmed by the gesture and the honesty. I brought hot chocolate because I thought maybe Mia would like it, Laura continued. And because after James died, the small gestures were the ones that mattered most. Someone bringing coffee, someone checking in, someone acknowledging that my life had been destroyed even though I was still standing. Thank you, Ethan said, meaning it more deeply than she could possibly know. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping coffee while morning light streamed through the windows. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Why are you being so kind? This is way beyond boss-employee relationship protocol. Laura smiled sadly. Because I wish someone had done this for me, and because I see you trying so hard to hold everything together, and I remember what that felt like, and I don't want you to have to do it alone. She paused. Unless I'm overstepping. If this is too much. It's not, Ethan said quickly. It's actually really nice. Good. Laura relaxed slightly. When does Mia get home from school? 3:15. What if I stayed? The question came out hesitant, uncertain in a way that was completely unlike the confident CEO Ethan knew. Not the whole time, but maybe I could meet her, if that's okay. Ethan thought about Mia's comment from yesterday, about wanting him to be there more, about feeling like he was always working. Having his boss show up at home seemed like the opposite of work-life balance. But then he looked at Laura's face and saw not his boss, but a woman who understood grief in a way most people didn't. A woman who was offering not judgment, but companionship. She's doing a school project about family, Ethan said slowly. Maybe you could help. Laura's smile was genuine and warm. I'd like that. The hours that followed were surreal in the best possible way. They talked about everything and nothing: books, movies, the city, their favorite restaurants that they'd both stopped going to after their spouses died because eating alone felt too depressing. Laura helped him fold laundry while they talked, both of them laughing at how domestic and strange it felt. When 3:15 approached, Ethan drove to pick up Mia, his mind racing. How did you explain to a 6-year-old that your boss was at the house? How did you explain it to yourself? But when they walked through the door and Mia saw Laura sitting on the couch, she didn't hesitate. Are you Daddy's friend from work? Laura smiled. I am. My name is Laura. It's very nice to meet you, Mia. Did you bring the hot chocolate? Mia pointed to the cup still sitting on the coffee table. I did. Is that okay? It's my favorite. Mia grinned, all shyness evaporating. Do you want to see my butterfly collection? And just like that, Laura was pulled into Mia's world of construction paper and glitter and elaborate explanations about the difference between monarchs and swallowtails. Ethan watched from the kitchen doorway, something warm and unfamiliar blooming in his chest. This wasn't what he'd expected when he'd sent that accidental text message. None of this was. But as he watched Laura listen with genuine interest while Mia explained her school project, he thought maybe mistakes weren't always disasters. Maybe sometimes they were doorways to something better. Laura stayed for 3 hours that afternoon, and by the time she left, Mia's school project had transformed from a half-finished poster board into something that actually looked presentable. More than that, Mia had talked nonstop through dinner about Miss Laura, and how she knew everything about butterflies, and how her hands didn't shake when she used the glue gun like Daddy's did. Ethan cleaned up the kitchen while Mia got ready for bed, his mind still processing the strangeness of the day. His boss had spent the afternoon on his living room floor cutting construction paper and listening to a 6-year-old's endless questions with patience he'd never seen her display at work. She'd laughed, really laughed, when Mia had accidentally gotten glitter in her hair, and she'd stayed to help clean up the mess even though she could have left hours earlier. Daddy? Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, clutching her elephant. Can Miss Laura come back? I don't know, sweetheart. She's very busy with work. But she's nice, and she didn't look sad when I talked about Mommy's butterflies. Ethan's hands stilled over the dish he was washing. What do you mean? Mia climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs, swinging her legs. Some people get weird faces when I talk about Mommy, like they don't know what to say. But Miss Laura just listened and asked questions like it was normal. Out of the mouths of children came observations that cut straight to the truth. Laura hadn't flinched when Mia had mentioned Sarah, hadn't changed the subject or offered empty platitudes. She'd simply acknowledged it and moved on, the way you could only do if you'd lived through something similar. She lost someone too, Ethan said quietly. Someone very important to her. Oh. Mia was silent for a moment, processing. Is that why she understands? Yeah, baby. That's why she understands. Good. Mia hopped down from the chair. I like people who understand. After tucking Mia in and reading 3 chapters of the book about a mouse who wanted to be a knight, Ethan finally had a moment to himself. He sat on the couch with his phone, staring at Laura's contact information, trying to figure out what to say. Thank you felt inadequate. What you did today meant everything felt too intense. Before he could overthink it further, a message came through. Laura Whitman. Thank you for letting me stay. I had a wonderful time. Mia is delightful. Ethan Brooks. Thank you for coming. And for the hot chocolate. You made her whole week. Laura Whitman. She made mine too. There was a pause, then another message. Laura Whitman. I know this is unconventional. If it makes things awkward at work, we can go back to normal professional boundaries. I won't be offended. Ethan read the message 3 times, feeling the weight of the choice she was offering him. They could pretend today hadn't happened, could return to being boss and employee with nothing personal bleeding through. It would be safer, simpler. But something in him rebelled against the idea of going back to that careful distance. Ethan Brooks. I don't want to go back to normal. Today was the first time in 2 years I felt like someone actually understood what this is like. Laura Whitman. Me too. Ethan Brooks. So what do we do? Laura Whitman. I have no idea, but maybe we could figure it out together. Ethan Brooks. I'd like that. He set his phone down, a small smile playing at his lips. The panic that had consumed him after sending the accidental text seemed ridiculous now. That mistake had cracked open a door he hadn't even known was there. And on the other side was someone who understood the particular weight of moving through the world when half of you was missing. The next morning at work felt different. Laura was back in her professional armor, blazer, heels, hair pulled back, but when their eyes met across the open office space, there was a flicker of acknowledgement that hadn't been there before. A shared secret that wasn't quite a secret, but wasn't public knowledge either. The day proceeded normally until lunchtime, when Ethan's phone buzzed. Laura Whitman, conference room 2. I brought Thai food. He found her already there, containers of pad Thai and spring rolls spread across the table. She'd loosened her blazer and kicked off her heels under the table, and she gestured for him to close the door. We should probably talk about boundaries, Laura said without preamble. What happened yesterday was unusual. I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. Ethan sat down, accepting the container she slid toward him. Do you feel like you pressured me? No, but I'm your boss, Ethan. There's an inherent power dynamic here that makes things complicated. Then let's uncomplicate it. He met her eyes. When we're at work, you're my boss. Professional boundaries apply. When we're not at work, we're two people who understand each other's grief and might benefit from having someone to talk to who gets it. Does that work? Laura considered this, twirling noodles around her fork. And if Mia gets attached? Kids are resilient, but they're also vulnerable. I don't want to become important to her and then disappear if this friendship doesn't work out. The fact that she'd thought about Mia's feelings made something warm bloom in Ethan's chest. That's a fair concern, but Mia's already lost one important person in her life. I think she understands better than most kids that relationships can change. And right now, she needs to see that it's possible to let new people in without betraying the people we've lost. Is that what you're learning too? Laura asked softly. I'm trying to. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Laura spoke again. James died on a Tuesday. I was at a conference in Seattle presenting to a room full of investors when the call came. His car had been hit by a semi-truck on the highway. He died before the ambulance arrived. She said it matter-of-factly, but her hands trembled slightly around her fork. I flew home, made the arrangements, gave the eulogy, and was back at work the following Monday. Everyone told me I was so strong, so composed. But you weren't, Ethan said. I was dying inside, Laura confirmed. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense anymore. Numbers, strategies, measurable outcomes, things I could control when everything else was chaos. She looked at him. How did Sarah die? Ethan had told the story so many times it should have felt rote by now, but it never did. She was coming home from the grocery store. Mia had requested chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast the next morning. A driver ran a red light going 60 in a 35 zone. Sarah's car flipped 3 times. He paused, the images he'd constructed from the police report playing in his mind. She died at the hospital 2 hours later. I got to say goodbye, which I'm told is a gift, but it didn't feel like one. No, Laura agreed. It feels like torture. The worst part was telling Mia. She was only 4. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that mommy isn't coming home ever again? Laura reached across the table and squeezed his hand. The gesture was simple, human, and it meant more than any words could have. You're doing a good job with her, Laura said. I know you probably don't feel like you are, but you are. She's happy and curious and kind. Sarah would be proud. Ethan's throat tightened. Thank you. They finished lunch talking about lighter things, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel but probably never would, the absurdity of reality television. When they finally stood to leave, Laura paused at the door. Same time next week? She asked. It's a date, Ethan said, then immediately wished he could take it back. I mean, not a date, just a regular lunch meeting thing. Laura's smile was knowing. I know what you meant, Ethan. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Lunches in conference room 2 became a standing appointment. Laura started texting him outside of work hours. Nothing inappropriate, just casual check-ins and shared observations about the absurdities of daily life. She sent him an article about grief that had helped her, and he sent her a video of Mia's impromptu butterfly dance that made her laugh until she cried. 3 weeks after that first afternoon at his house, Laura showed up again on a Saturday morning. This time with bagels and cream cheese and an admission that she'd been awake since 4 a.m. and couldn't shake the restlessness that sometimes came with weekends when there was no work to hide behind. "Come in," Ethan said, stepping back to let her inside. "Mia's still asleep, but she'll be thrilled when she wakes up." They sat at his small kitchen table, spreading cream cheese on bagels and drinking coffee while early morning light filtered through the windows. "I did something probably stupid," Laura said, staring into her coffee cup. "I went to the cemetery yesterday. First time in 6 months. How was it?" "Awful, cathartic, necessary." She looked up at him. "I told James about you and Mia, about how I've been spending time with you both. I needed him to know that I wasn't forgetting him, just trying to figure out how to keep living." Ethan felt the weight of that confession. "What do you think he would have said?" Laura's smile was sad and genuine. "He would have told me I was an idiot for isolating myself for so long. He was the warm one in our relationship, the one who made friends everywhere we went. He would have liked you." "Sarah would have liked you too," Ethan said. "She always said I needed more people in my life who would call me on my bullshit. She would have appreciated your directness." "I miss having someone to call me on mine," Laura admitted. "James was the only person who could tell me when I was being too rigid or too focused on work. Without him, She gestured vaguely. "I became nothing but work. And now? Now I'm trying to remember that I'm a person with a life outside of quarterly reports and client meetings." She met his eyes. "Thank you for that." "I think we're helping each other," Ethan said. Mia chose that moment to make her entrance, stumbling into the kitchen in her pajamas with her hair sticking up in every direction. Her face lit up when she saw Laura. "Miss Laura, did you bring bagels?" "I did, and there's one with strawberry cream cheese with your name on it." Mia climbed into Laura's lap like it was the most natural thing in the world, and Laura wrapped her arms around the little girl without hesitation. Ethan watched them, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. This was dangerous territory. He knew that. Laura was his boss, and more than that, they were both still carrying the weight of losses that hadn't fully healed. Getting close to someone, letting Mia get attached, it was asking for potential heartbreak. But watching Laura help Mia spread cream cheese on her bagel, listening to them discuss whether butterflies could taste with their feet, Ethan couldn't bring himself to care about the risks. For the first time since Sarah died, his house felt like a home again. After breakfast, Laura surprised them both by suggesting they go to the park. The three of them spent the morning there, pushing Mia on the swings and helping her climb the elaborate playground structure. Laura had changed into jeans and sneakers she kept in her car, and with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, she looked nothing like the CEO who commanded boardrooms. "Higher, Miss Laura!" Mia shrieked from the swing, her legs pumping air. Laura pushed, laughing. "Any higher and you'll fly away. Maybe I want to fly." Ethan watched from the bench, his phone forgotten in his pocket. Other families populated the park, mothers and fathers and children, the picture of normalcy he'd once had and thought he'd never experience again. Except this wasn't the same. This was something different, something being built from broken pieces into a new shape he didn't quite recognize yet. Eventually, Mia wore herself out and demanded ice cream with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. They walked to the shop 2 blocks from the park, Mia holding hands with both adults, and chattering about a girl at school who could do a cartwheel. "Can you do a cartwheel, Miss Laura?" "I used to," Laura said, "but that was a long time ago." "Show me." "Absolutely not. I'm too old and would probably break something." "You're not old," Mia said with the certainty of youth. "Daddy's old. You're just grown up." Ethan laughed. "Thanks, sweetheart. Good to know where I stand." At the ice cream shop, they squeezed into a corner booth, Mia working on a cone of chocolate chip while Laura and Ethan shared a sundae. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything and nothing. Mia's upcoming field trip, a new project at work, whether dogs or cats made better pets. "We can't have a pet," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Daddy says we're not home enough and it wouldn't be fair." "That's very responsible of your dad," Laura said. "I know." Mia licked her cone thoughtfully. "Miss Laura, do you have any pets?" "No, I had a cat once, a long time ago, but after he died I couldn't bring myself to get another one." "Because you were too sad?" Laura's expression softened. Yes, because I was too sad. That's okay, Mia said with the profound simplicity of childhood. Being sad is normal. That's what my therapist says. She says feelings are like weather. Sometimes it's sunny and sometimes it rains, but it always changes eventually. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He'd worried constantly about whether therapy was helping Mia or just forcing her to confront pain she was too young to process. But hearing her repeat these lessons with such genuine understanding made him believe they were doing something right. Your therapist is very smart, Laura said softly. I know. She has good snacks too. They lingered at the ice cream shop until Mia started yawning, the morning of fresh air and excitement catching up with her. On the walk back to where Laura had parked her car, Mia held Laura's hand and talked about her week at school, and Laura listened with the same attention she gave to million-dollar client presentations. When they reached the car, Mia surprised them both by throwing her arms around Laura's waist. Thank you for coming to play with us. Laura knelt down to Mia's level, her eyes suspiciously bright. Thank you for letting me. I had the best morning. Will you come back again? Laura glanced up at Ethan, a question in her eyes. He nodded. I'd love to, Laura told Mia. They watched her drive away, Mia waving enthusiastically until the car disappeared around the corner. Then she looked up at Ethan with an expression far too knowing for a 6-year-old. You like Miss Laura? It wasn't a question. She's a good friend, Ethan said carefully. Mommy would like her too. The words hit him like a physical blow, not painful, but powerful. You think so? Yeah. Mommy always said you needed more friends who made you laugh. Mia took his hand. Miss Laura makes you laugh. Later that night, after Mia was asleep and the house was quiet, Ethan sat on his back porch with a beer and his phone. He should probably establish clearer boundaries with Laura. They were getting too comfortable, too intertwined in each other's lives. It was only a matter of time before someone at work noticed, before it became complicated. But when his phone buzzed with a message from her, he couldn't stop smiling. Laura Whitman. Thank you for today. I can't remember the last time I felt that relaxed. Ethan Brooks. Thank you for pushing Mia on the swings for 20 minutes straight. My arms would have fallen off. Laura Whitman. I may not be able to move them tomorrow. Worth it, though. Ethan Brooks. She asked if you were coming back. Laura Whitman. What did you tell her? Ethan Brooks. That I hoped so. There was a longer pause before her next message. Laura Whitman. Ethan, I need to be honest with you. I'm not sure what we're doing here. This started as me trying to help someone who reminded me of myself. But it's becoming something more than that. And I don't want to complicate your life or confuse Mia or cross lines we can't uncross. Ethan stared at the message, his heart pounding. This was the moment where they could step back, where they could return to safe professional distance. Part of him wanted to take that escape route, but a larger part, the part that had felt alive again today watching Laura laugh at the park, refused to let fear make his decisions. Ethan Brooks. I'm not sure what we're doing either, but I know that I haven't felt this much like myself since before Sarah died. I know that Mia lights up when you're around. I know that when I'm with you, grief feels a little less heavy. Maybe that's enough for now? Laura Whitman. Maybe it is. Ethan Brooks. We don't have to label it or define it. We can just be. Two people who understand each other. Two friends figuring out how to live again. Laura Whitman. I'd like that. Ethan Brooks. Good. Because Mia's already planning your next visit. Something about teaching you to do a proper cartwheel. Laura Whitman. I meant what I said about breaking something. Ethan Brooks. I'll have the ice packs ready. They texted for another hour, the conversation drifting from serious to silly and back again. When Ethan finally went to bed, he felt lighter than he had in years. The following weeks blurred together in a pattern that began to feel like routine. Laura came over most weekends, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes for most of the day. She helped with Mia's homework, taught her how to braid hair in a way Ethan never could master, and became a fixture in their lives so natural that it was hard to remember what weekends had been like before. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, but the ease between them was evident. Other employees noticed. Ethan caught curious glances, heard whispered speculation, but no one said anything directly. One Friday afternoon, Michael from accounting cornered Ethan by the coffee machine. "So, you and Whitman, huh?" Ethan kept his expression neutral. "We're friends." "Right. Friends." Michael's tone suggested he didn't believe it for a second. "Look, I'm not judging. You're both adults. Just be careful, man. Office relationships can get messy." "It's not like that," Ethan said, even though he wasn't entirely sure what it was like. Michael shrugged. "Whatever you say. But for what it's worth, I haven't seen her smile this much in the entire time I've worked here. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it." That evening, Ethan mentioned the conversation to Laura during their usual Friday video call. They'd started doing these on the nights she didn't come over, a way to decompress from the work week and check in with each other. "People are talking," he said. Laura sighed. "I was wondering when that would start. Does it bother you?" "Not really." "Does it bother you?" "Only if it makes things difficult for you. I have more power in this situation, Ethan. If rumors start affecting your standing at work—" "They won't," he interrupted. "And even if they did, I can handle it. We're not doing anything wrong." "Aren't we, though?" Laura's expression was troubled. "I keep thinking about HR policies and conflicts of interest, and what happens if this, whatever this is, goes wrong. You could argue that I've created an uncomfortable work environment, that I've abused my position. Have you forced me to spend time with you? No. Have you threatened my job or made work difficult when I've said no to personal requests? Of course not. Then stop catastrophizing." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "We're two people who've become friends outside of work. It happens all the time. The only thing that makes it complicated is the grief. And that's nobody's business but ours." Laura was quiet for a moment. "When did you get so wise?" "Probably around the same time I realized that playing it safe was just another word for being afraid to live." "Sarah really would have liked me," Laura said softly. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "She really would have, son." The next Saturday brought rain, forcing their usual park plans indoors. Laura arrived with supplies for an elaborate blanket fort, which she and Mia constructed in the living room with an engineering precision that made Ethan laugh. "You're applying project management principles to a blanket fort," he observed. "If you're going to build something, build it right," Laura said, adjusting a crucial support pillow. They spent the afternoon in the fort, reading books and playing board games while rain pattered against the windows. At some point, Mia fell asleep between them, her head on Laura's lap and her feet in Ethan's. "She trusts you," Ethan said quietly. Laura stroked Mia's hair gently. "I trust her too. Is that strange?" "No, I think trust is trust, regardless of age." "I never thought I'd have this," Laura admitted. "After James died, I assumed this part of my life was over. Family, domesticity, lazy Saturdays with people I loved." She paused. "I'm not saying I love you. That came out wrong. I just meant—" "I know what you meant," Ethan said. "And I feel the same way. This wasn't in my plans either, but here we are." "Here we are," Laura echoed. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain and Mia's soft breathing. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, but inside the blanket fort, everything felt safe. "Ethan?" Laura's voice was hesitant. "Yeah? What happens if we screw this up? What happens if we realize we're not actually compatible as friends? Or if this gets too complicated? Or if one of us gets hurt?" I couldn't bear it if Mia paid the price for our mistakes. It was the question that had been lurking beneath every shared meal, every comfortable silence, every moment of connection. The question they'd both been avoiding because acknowledging it meant confronting the very real possibility of loss. "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. "But I do know that hiding from the possibility of pain means hiding from the possibility of joy. And Mia's already learned that lesson the hard way. Maybe it's time I did too." Laura nodded slowly, her fingers still moving through Mia's hair. "Maybe it is." The rain continued into the evening, and Laura stayed for dinner. They ordered pizza and watched an animated movie, the three of them crowded on the couch under a shared blanket. When the credits rolled, Mia was asleep again, this time with her head on Ethan's shoulder. "I should go," Laura whispered, starting to stand. "Or you could stay," Ethan heard himself say. "I mean, it's still raining. The roads are probably bad. You could take the guest room." Laura searched his face. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." She stayed, helped him carry Mia to bed, accepted the spare toothbrush and oversized t-shirt he offered, and settled into the guest room like she belonged there. When Ethan finally went to his own bed, he lay awake listening to the sounds of another person in his house, the creak of floorboards, the running water, the small noises that meant he wasn't alone. It should have felt strange. Instead, it felt like coming home. Morning came soft and quiet, filtered sunlight replacing the previous night's storm. Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in his kitchen, one high and animated, the other lower and warm with laughter. For a disorienting moment, he thought he was dreaming, then memory clicked into place. Laura had stayed. He pulled on a sweatshirt and padded down the hallway, stopping in the doorway to take in the scene. Laura stood at the stove in his old t-shirt and her jeans from yesterday, flipping pancakes while Mia sat on the counter beside her, legs swinging and talking a mile a minute about the proper chocolate chip to batter ratio. "Daddy!" Mia spotted him first. "Miss Laura is making pancakes, real ones, not the frozen kind." "I can make real pancakes," Ethan protested, moving into the kitchen. "You burn them every time," Mia said with brutal honesty. Laura grinned at him over her shoulder. "I hope you don't mind. I woke up early and Mia found me, and one thing led to another." "I don't mind." The words came out rougher than he intended, weighted with something he couldn't name. This scene, this ordinary domestic morning, felt both foreign and achingly familiar, like muscle memory from another life. They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table, Mia dominating the conversation with detailed descriptions of her upcoming class field trip to the Science Museum. Laura asked questions that showed genuine interest, and Ethan found himself watching the two of them interact with a feeling that sat somewhere between contentment and terror. This was dangerous. Every moment Laura spent in their lives, every smile she coaxed from Mia, every comfortable silence between them, it was building something that could shatter if handled carelessly. And Ethan knew better than anyone how quickly solid ground could turn to quicksand. After breakfast, Laura excused herself to change, and Ethan started clearing dishes. Mia lingered at the table, unusually quiet. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" he asked. "Is Miss Laura going to be my new mommy?" The plate in Ethan's hand nearly slipped. He set it down carefully and turned to face his daughter. "What makes you ask that?" Mia shrugged, her expression serious. "Sophie at school says when daddies have lady friends who sleep over, they become new mommies, and I like Miss Laura, but I don't want to forget mommy." Ethan's heart cracked open. He pulled out the chair beside Mia and sat down, taking her small hands in his. "Listen to me very carefully, okay? Nobody will ever replace mommy. She's your mom, and she always will be, even though she's not here anymore. But Miss Laura, Miss Laura is my friend, a very good friend, and she cares about you very much, but that doesn't mean she's trying to take mommy's place." He paused, choosing his words carefully. People's hearts are big enough to love lots of people at the same time. Loving someone new doesn't mean we love mommy any less. Mia considered this, her face scrunched in concentration. "So I can love Miss Laura and mommy both?" "Absolutely." "And you can too?" The question hit harder than it should have. Ethan realized he'd been asking himself the same thing, just in different words. "Yeah, baby, I can too." Mia nodded, satisfied, and hopped down from her chair. "Okay, I'm going to show Miss Laura my rock collection." She bounded out of the kitchen, leaving Ethan sitting alone with his thoughts and the ghost of a conversation he hadn't expected to have for years yet. Laura emerged a few minutes later, back in her own clothes with her hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She found Ethan still at the table, staring into his coffee cup. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Mia wanted to know if you were going to be her new mom." Laura went very still. "Oh, I told her nobody could replace Sarah. That you were my friend, and friends can care about people without replacing anyone." "And what did she say?" "She asked if she could love both you and Sarah. I said yes." Laura sat down across from him, her expression careful. "Ethan, if this is too much..." "It's not too much, it's just..." He struggled to find words for the tangle of emotions in his chest. "It's real now. It's not just us adults figuring out our grief. It's Mia trying to understand where you fit in her life. And I want you to fit, Laura. I do. But I'm terrified of what happens if I'm wrong. Wrong about what? About this. About us. About whether I'm ready to let someone in or if I'm just lonely and you're convenient. He forced himself to meet her eyes. You deserve better than being someone's consolation prize. Laura reached across the table and took his hand, her grip firm and grounding. First of all, I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. I'm a grown woman who can make her own decisions about where I spend my time and who I care about. Second, do you really think I'd be here if I thought you were using me? No, but no buts. I've been where you are, Ethan. The guilt of feeling happy again. The fear that moving forward means betraying the person you lost. The constant second-guessing of every emotion because you're not sure if it's real or just a response to loneliness. She squeezed his hand. But here's what I learned. Grief doesn't have an expiration date, and neither does the permission to live your life. You can miss Sarah every day for the rest of your life and still choose to be happy. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. How long did it take you to believe that? Laura's smile was sad. I'm still working on it, but being here with you and Mia makes it easier. They sat in silence for a moment, hands joined across the table, two people trying to navigate the impossible terrain between past and future. I should probably go, Laura said eventually. I have errands to run, and you two probably need some family time. Will you come back? The question came out more vulnerable than Ethan intended. Do you want me to? Yes. Very much, yes. Laura stood, but she didn't let go of his hand. Then I'll come back. Maybe we could do dinner this week. All three of us, something normal. Normal sounds good. She left after saying goodbye to Mia, and the house felt emptier for her absence. Ethan spent the rest of the day with his daughter, trying to focus on coloring books and playground time, but his mind kept drifting back to the conversation at the kitchen table. That night, after Mia was asleep, his phone buzzed. Laura Whitman. I've been thinking about what you said this morning, about being afraid you're wrong about us. Ethan Brooks. And? Laura Whitman. I'm afraid too. Terrified, actually, but I think the fear means it matters. If we didn't care, we wouldn't be scared. Ethan Brooks. That's very philosophical for 10 p.m. on a Sunday. Laura Whitman. I'm drinking wine and having feelings. It's a dangerous combination. Ethan Brooks. What kind of feelings? There was a longer pause before her response came through. Laura Whitman. The kind that make me want to be honest, even though it's risky. I like spending time with you, Ethan. With both of you. It makes me feel like a whole person again, instead of just a collection of professional accomplishments and old grief. Ethan Brooks. I feel the same way. Being around you makes me remember who I was before everything fell apart. Laura Whitman. So what do we do about it? Ethan Brooks. We keep being honest. We keep showing up. We stop apologizing for wanting to be happy. Laura Whitman. That simple? Ethan Brooks. Probably not, but it's a start. The dinner Laura had suggested happened on Wednesday. She came straight from work, still in her business attire, but with her heels swapped for flats she kept in her car. Mia insisted on helping cook, which meant the spaghetti took twice as long and there was flour on every surface, but nobody seemed to mind. They ate at the kitchen table, candlelight flickering because Mia had declared it fancy dinner night. The conversation flowed easily between work stories carefully edited for young ears and Mia's detailed explanation of why her teacher was wrong about the pronunciation of pterodactyl. After dinner, while Ethan did dishes, Laura helped Mia with her reading homework. He watched them from the kitchen, Laura's patient corrections and Mia's determined focus, and felt something shift inside his chest. This wasn't just friendship anymore. It wasn't just two grief-stricken people finding comfort in shared understanding. This was something that looked dangerously like family. The thought should have sent him running. Instead, it made him want to hold on tighter. Later, after Mia was in bed, Laura lingered by the door, her car keys in hand but her feet not moving toward leaving. I should go, she said for the third time. You keep saying that. I know. I'm having trouble with the execution. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, studying her face in the porch light. Laura, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever feel guilty for being here, for enjoying this, for wanting something good again? Her expression crumpled slightly, vulnerability breaking through her usual composure. Every single day. I wake up looking forward to seeing you and Mia, and then I feel like I'm betraying James. Like I'm supposed to be sad forever as proof that he mattered. But he did matter. I know that intellectually. Emotionally is harder. She twisted her keys in her hands. Sometimes I catch myself laughing at something you said or feeling excited about weekend plans. And there's this voice in my head that says I don't deserve it, that I should be home alone, still drowning in grief. What do you say back to that voice? That James wouldn't want that for me. That he loved me enough to want me to be happy, even if he couldn't be here to see it. Her voice broke slightly. But knowing something and believing it are different things. Ethan stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I have that same voice. It tells me that Sarah died and I should have died with her, emotionally if not physically. That moving forward means I didn't love her enough. But you know that's not true. Just like you know your guilt isn't rational. They stood close enough that Ethan could see the unshed tears in Laura's eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from her in the cool evening air. We're a mess, Laura said, laughing wetly. Yeah, but at least we're a mess together. She reached out and squeezed his hand, the gesture becoming familiar. Same time Friday? I'll cook. Badly, but I'll cook. I'll bring wine. Good wine to make up for the bad cooking. She left, and Ethan stood on the porch watching her taillights disappear, feeling like they'd crossed some invisible threshold without either of them acknowledging it out loud. Friday came with unexpected complications. Ethan's mother called during lunch, her voice tight with worry. I heard you've been seeing someone. He closed his office door, already knowing where this conversation was headed. I've made a friend, yes. Your aunt saw you at the park with a woman and Mia. She said it looked quite cozy. Of course his aunt had seen them, small city syndrome at its finest. Her name is Laura. She's a friend who understands what I'm going through, that's all. That's all? His mother's skepticism was palpable. Ethan, sweetheart, it's only been 2 years. Don't you think it's too soon to be introducing Mia to new women? The words hit like a slap. Too soon according to who? Is there a grief timeline I'm supposed to follow? I just don't want you to make mistakes because you're lonely. And I don't want Mia getting attached to someone who might not stick around. Ethan counted to 10, reminding himself that his mother meant well even when she was wildly overstepping. Mom, I appreciate your concern, but Laura isn't some random woman I'm casually dating. She's someone who lost her husband too, someone who understands what this family has been through, and Mia adores her. But what about Sarah? Sarah is gone. The words came out harsher than he intended. She's gone, Mom, and I miss her every single day. But I'm still here. Mia's still here, and we're both trying to figure out how to live again. Laura helps with that. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I just want you to be happy, his mother said finally, her voice small. Then trust me to know what makes me happy. After the call ended, Ethan sat staring at his computer screen, his mother's words echoing in his head. Too soon. Making mistakes. Don't want Mia getting attached. What if she was right? What if he was moving too fast, letting Laura too far into their lives before he'd properly processed his grief? What if this blew up and Mia was the one who paid the price? His phone buzzed with a message from Laura. Laura Whitman. Still on for tonight? I found an amazing Cabernet. He stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. He could cancel. Could put some distance between them, take time to think this through more carefully. Could protect himself and Mia from potential heartbreak. Or he could choose to keep living. Ethan Brooks. Absolutely. See you at 7. Laura arrived exactly on time, as always, carrying the promised wine and a bouquet of wildflowers that made Mia squeal with delight. These are for you, Laura said, handing the flowers to Mia. I saw them at the farmer's market and thought of you. They're beautiful. I'm going to put them in my room so I can look at them forever. Mia thundered off to find a suitable vase, leaving Laura and Ethan alone in the entryway. Hi, Laura said softly. Hi yourself. She studied his face, concern creeping into her expression. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He trailed off, not sure how to articulate the tangle of emotions from his mother's call. Ethan, talk to me. They moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. Ethan told her about the phone call, about his mother's concerns, about his own spiraling doubts. Laura listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. "Your mother's wrong about the timeline," she said when he finished. "There is no right amount of time to grieve before you're allowed to be happy again, but she's not wrong to worry about Mia getting hurt." "I know, that's what scares me. So let's talk about it. Really talk about it." Laura turned to face him fully. "What are we doing here, Ethan? What is this thing between us?" The question hung in the air, demanding honesty. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I know you're important to me. I know I look forward to seeing you in a way I haven't looked forward to anything in years. I know that when I imagine my future now, you're in it. But I'm terrified that I'm confusing grief companionship with something more. That we're just two lonely people clinging to each other because we understand each other's pain." Laura was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Can I tell you what I think we're doing? Please." "I think we're two people who've been through hell and found each other on the other side. I think we started as people who understood each other's grief, but we've become more than that. We've become people who laugh together and cook together and build blanket forts together. We've become people who care about each other not because of our shared trauma, but despite it." She took a shaky breath. "I think I'm falling for you, Ethan, and that scares me more than anything has scared me since James died." The confession landed between them like a bomb, impossible to ignore or take back. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct told him to deflect, to make a joke, to retreat to safer emotional territory. But Laura had been brave enough to be honest, and she deserved the same in return. "I'm falling for you too," he said quietly. "And you're right, it's terrifying. Because falling for you means accepting that my life isn't over just because Sarah's is. It means choosing to be vulnerable again, to risk losing someone I care about, to let Mia get attached to someone who might leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Laura said firmly. "You can't promise that. None of us can. That's the whole problem." "No." Laura moved closer, taking both his hands in hers. "The problem is that we're both so focused on what we might lose that we're not seeing what we already have. Look at us, Ethan. We're having this conversation instead of running away. We're being honest about our feelings instead of hiding behind friendship. That's not nothing." "It's not," he agreed. "So here's what I propose. We stop pretending this is just friendship. We acknowledge what it really is. Two people who care about each other trying to build something new from the wreckage of their old lives. We take it slow because we both need that. We communicate honestly because we both deserve that. And we give ourselves permission to be happy without guilt. And if it doesn't work out, then we deal with that if and when it happens. But I refuse to sabotage something good because I'm afraid of something bad that might never occur." Ethan searched her face, looking for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. He found only determination and hope, and something that looked dangerously like love. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, let's do this. Let's stop pretending and see where this goes." Laura's smile was radiant and relieved. She leaned forward, and for a moment Ethan thought she might kiss him. Instead, she rested her forehead against his, their hands still clasped between them. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being brave enough to try again." They stayed like that until Mia burst back into the room, clutching a vase with the wildflowers haphazardly arranged. "Look! I made them beautiful!" Laura pulled back, wiping quickly at her eyes. "They're perfect, sweetheart." Dinner that night felt different. The same activities, cooking together, eating at the kitchen table, Mia's endless chatter, but weighted with new meaning. This wasn't just three people sharing a meal. This was the beginning of something intentional, something chosen. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Mia insisted on a movie, picking an animated film she'd seen dozens of times. She settled between Ethan and Laura on the couch, her head on Laura's shoulder and her feet in Ethan's lap. Halfway through the movie, during a particularly emotional scene where the characters reunited after being separated, Mia spoke without taking her eyes off the screen. "I love you, Miss Laura." The words were simple, delivered with the casual certainty of childhood, but they hit like an earthquake. Laura's breath caught. She looked at Ethan over Mia's head, her expression a mixture of joy and terror. "I love you too, Mia," Laura said softly, pressing a kiss to the top of the little girl's head. Mia, satisfied, returned her attention to the movie like she hadn't just fundamentally altered the emotional landscape of the room. Ethan met Laura's eyes, and in them he saw his own thoughts reflected back. This was real. This mattered. This was worth the risk. Later, after Mia had fallen asleep on the couch and Ethan had carried her to bed, he and Laura stood in the kitchen sharing the last of the wine. "She meant it," Laura said, "when she said she loved me." "I know. That's a lot of responsibility." "It is." Ethan set down his wine glass. "But you can handle it. You already have been handling it." Laura turned to face him fully. "I meant it too. When I said I was falling for you, I need you to know that this isn't casual for me, Ethan. This is terrifying and wonderful and completely real." He stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her eyes, close enough to count her heartbeats if he wanted to. "It's real for me too," he said. "So what happens now?" "Now we stop overthinking. Now we just be." This time, when Laura leaned in, Ethan met her halfway. The kiss was soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. It tasted like wine and hope, and the courage to try again. When they pulled apart, Laura was smiling through tears. "I didn't think I'd get to feel this again," she admitted. "Neither did I." They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the dishwasher hummed and the house settled around them. Two broken people discovering that broken things could still fit together beautifully. The morning after that first kiss, Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the disorienting sensation that something fundamental had shifted in his world. He reached for his phone, half expecting to find a message from Laura saying she'd made a mistake, that they'd moved too fast, that she needed space. Instead, he found a photo. Laura had sent an image of her kitchen table with 2 coffee cups and a single wildflower in a small vase. The caption read, "Good morning, no regrets." Ethan smiled, his chest loosening with relief he hadn't known he was holding. Ethan Brooks, "Good morning, still terrified?" Laura Whitman, "Absolutely. You?" Ethan Brooks, "Completely. Want to have lunch and be terrified together?" Laura Whitman, "It's Saturday. Come to my place? I'll cook." The invitation felt significant. In all the weeks they'd known each other, Ethan had never been to Laura's home. She'd always come to them, slipping seamlessly into their space, but never inviting them into hers. The fact that she was opening that door now meant something. Ethan Brooks, "What time?" Laura Whitman, "Noon? And bring Mia. I have a garden she might like." Mia was thrilled at the prospect of visiting Miss Laura's house, spending the entire morning asking questions about whether Laura had butterflies in her garden, and if her house was big, and whether they could stay for a sleepover. "We're just going for lunch, sweetheart," Ethan said, helping her pick out a dress that she insisted was appropriate for visiting someone important. "But maybe if we're really good, she'll ask us to stay longer," Mia said with the hopeful logic of a 6-year-old. Laura's house was a craftsman-style bungalow in a quiet neighborhood lined with old oak trees. The garden she'd mentioned was visible from the street, a riot of colors and textures that suggested someone who cared deeply about growing things. "It's like a fairy house," Mia breathed as they walked up the stone path to the front door. Laura opened the door before they could knock, dressed in jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes look impossibly bright. Her hair was down, falling in waves around her shoulders, and she looked more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen her. "Welcome," she said, stepping back to let them in. "I'm a little nervous. I haven't had people over in years." The interior of the house was warm and lived in, filled with books and comfortable furniture and small touches that spoke of the life Laura had built with James. Photos lined the mantel. Laura and a dark-haired man with kind eyes, frozen in moments of joy that had ended too soon. Ethan saw Laura watching him look at the pictures, saw the vulnerability in her expression. "That's James," she said quietly. "I almost took them down before you came, but that felt like hiding. I don't want to hide." "I'm glad you didn't." Ethan meant it. These photos were part of Laura's story, just like the ones of Sarah in his house were part of his. Mia had already wandered to the back windows, pressing her nose against the glass to see the garden better. "Can I go outside?" "Of course." Laura pulled open the sliding door. "Just be careful of the roses. They have thorns." They watched Mia skip into the garden, immediately gravitating toward a butterfly that had landed on a purple flower. "She's easy to please," Laura said. "She is. She gets that from her mother." The words came out before Ethan could stop them, but Laura just smiled. "Tell me about Sarah. Really tell me. Not just the grief parts, but who she was." They moved to the kitchen, where Laura had soup simmering on the stove and fresh bread cooling on the counter. While she ladled soup into bowls, Ethan talked. He told her about how Sarah had been terrible at directions but refused to use GPS out of pure stubbornness. How she'd sing off key in the shower and laugh when he teased her about it. How she'd wanted to be a veterinarian as a child and had ended up as a middle school teacher instead, claiming she'd just switched from animals to their slightly more evolved cousins. "She sounds wonderful," Laura said when he finished. "She was. She really was." Ethan paused. "Tell me about James." Laura's expression softened with memory. "James was the most genuinely kind person I've ever known. He volunteered at a food bank every Saturday morning, even when we were both working 80-hour weeks. He couldn't cook to save his life, but insisted on trying, which meant I ate a lot of charred dinners and pretended they were delicious." She laughed, but tears gathered in her eyes. "He wanted kids desperately. We'd just started talking seriously about it when he died. He would have been such a good father." "I'm sorry you didn't get that chance." "Me too." Laura wiped at her eyes. "But I'm not sorry I met you and Mia. That probably sounds strange." "It doesn't. I feel the same way." They ate lunch at Laura's dining table with the windows open and Mia running in periodically to report on various garden discoveries. The conversation flowed between light and heavy, past and present, grief and hope. After lunch, Laura showed them the rest of the house. Her home office was meticulous and organized, exactly what Ethan would have expected. The guest room was generic but comfortable, but it was the last room, the one Laura hesitated before opening, that took Ethan's breath away. It was a nursery, or would have been. Pale yellow walls, a crib still in its box leaning against one wall, a rocking chair by the window. The room was frozen in time, caught between what was planned and what never happened. "We'd just started setting it up," Laura said quietly. 2 weeks before James died. I couldn't finish it after, but I also couldn't dismantle it. So it's just here, waiting." Ethan understood immediately. This room was Laura's version of Sarah's contact in his phone, a place to hold hope that had nowhere else to go. "You don't have to explain," he said. "I want to." Laura stepped into the room, running her hand along the rocking chair. "I need you to understand all of me, Ethan, not just the put-together CEO or the woman who shows up to help with homework. This broken part, too." "You're not broken. Neither are you, but we're both cracked, and that's okay. Cracks let the light in, right? Is that from something?" "Probably. I read it on a coffee mug once." Laura smiled through her tears. "The point is, I want this, with you, but I need you to know what you're getting into. I'm not just a woman who lost her husband. I'm a woman who lost the future she'd planned, the children she wanted, the life she thought she'd have." Ethan crossed the room and took her hands. "I'm a man who still talks to his dead wife in the middle of the night. Who can't throw away her clothes even though they've been sitting in boxes for 2 years. Who sometimes forgets she's gone and sets 3 places at the table. We're a mess. A perfect mess." They stood in the unfinished nursery holding each other while afternoon light painted shadows on the yellow walls, 2 people learning that brokenness didn't preclude healing. Mia found them there eventually, demanding attention and questions about why the room had a crib but no baby. Laura answered honestly. She and James had wanted a baby but ran out of time, and Mia accepted this with the matter-of-fact resilience of a child who already understood that life didn't always work out the way people planned. "You can have me instead," Mia offered with devastating simplicity. "I'm not a baby, but I'm still pretty good." Laura knelt down to Mia's level, her voice thick with emotion. You're not just pretty good, you're the absolute best. They stayed at Laura's house until early evening, long past when they'd planned to leave. Laura taught Mia how to deadhead roses and showed her the small pond where frogs lived. Ethan helped her replant some herbs that had overgrown their containers. It felt domestic and easy and right, in a way that made Ethan's chest ache with hope. On the drive home, Mia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from running around the garden. Ethan's phone buzzed at a red light. Laura Whitman. Thank you for today, for seeing my mess and staying anyway. Ethan Brooks. Thank you for showing me, for trusting me with it. Laura Whitman. I want to do this right, Ethan. I want to build something real with you and Mia, but I'm scared I don't know how. Ethan Brooks. We'll figure it out together. That's the whole point of together. The following Monday at work felt surreal. Ethan sat in meetings trying to focus on marketing strategies while his mind kept drifting to Laura across the table. They were professionals, maintaining appropriate distance and business formality. But there were moments, a shared glance, a small smile, the brush of hands when passing documents, that felt like secret language. Michael cornered him again by the coffee machine. So it's definitely not just friendship anymore, is it? Ethan didn't bother denying it. No, it's not. Good for you, man. You both deserve to be happy. Michael paused. But be careful. HR won't love this if it becomes public. I know, we're being discreet. Discreet is good. Just make sure you're also being smart. The warning stuck with Ethan throughout the day. He and Laura were navigating uncharted territory, a relationship that blended personal and professional in ways that could become complicated quickly. But when Laura texted him that evening asking if she could come over for dinner, all thoughts of complications vanished. She showed up with Chinese takeout and a new book for Mia about caterpillars. They ate dinner together at the kitchen table, talking about their days and laughing at Mia's impression of her teacher. After dinner, Laura helped with bath time, sitting on the bathroom floor and making elaborate hairstyles with shampoo while Mia giggled. This was the routine they fell into over the following weeks. Dinners together most weeknights, Laura arriving after work and staying until Mia's bedtime. Weekends spent at the park or the museum or Laura's garden. Quiet moments on the couch after Mia fell asleep, talking about everything and nothing while learning each other's patterns and preferences. They were building a life together, piece by careful piece, but not everyone was happy about it. Ethan's mother called again 3 weeks after their last conversation, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. I saw the pictures, Ethan. He closed his office door. What pictures? Your aunt took photos of you at the farmer's market. You and that Laura woman and Mia. You were holding hands. You looked like a family. We were at the farmer's market buying vegetables, Mom. Not exactly scandalous behavior. It's too fast. Sarah hasn't even been gone 3 years and you're already replacing her. The words hit like a physical blow. I'm not replacing anyone. Then what do you call this? Moving on? Finding happiness? Erasing the life you had with my daughter-in-law? Ethan counted to 10, reminding himself that his mother's grief was valid even when her accusations weren't. Sarah will always be Mia's mother. Nothing and no one will change that. But Sarah is gone, Mom. And I'm still here. I'm 34 years old with a daughter to raise and a life to live. I can't spend the rest of it alone just to prove I loved my wife. I'm not asking you to be alone forever, just to wait, to give it more time. How much time is enough? 5 years? 10? Should I wait until Mia's grown and gone before I'm allowed to be happy again? His mother was crying now. I just miss her so much, and seeing you with someone else makes it feel like everyone's forgetting her. Ethan's anger deflated, replaced by the familiar weight of shared grief. I miss her too, every single day. But Laura isn't trying to replace Sarah. She's just someone who understands what we've been through and wants to help us heal. And what happens when Mia starts calling her mom? What happens when you forget what Sarah's voice sounded like or the way she smiled? What happens when this Laura woman becomes more real than the memories? The questions hit too close to fears Ethan had been trying not to voice. He already couldn't quite remember the exact tone of Sarah's laugh. The memories were fading at the edges, becoming softer and less precise, and it terrified him. I don't know, he admitted quietly. But I know that hiding from life because I'm afraid of forgetting isn't the answer. Sarah wouldn't want that for me or Mia. You don't know what she'd want. She's not here to tell us. No, she's not. But I knew her for 12 years, Mom. I knew how much she valued joy and connection and living fully, and I have to believe she'd want us to do the same, even without her. The conversation ended without resolution, both of them exhausted and hurt. Ethan sat in his office staring at his computer screen, his mother's words echoing in his head. That night, after Mia was asleep and Laura had gone home, Ethan did something he hadn't done in months. He opened Sarah's contact on his phone and typed a message. I'm falling in love again. With someone who understands grief the way you would have understood it. With someone Mia adores. With someone who makes me want to keep living instead of just surviving. I need you to tell me this is okay. I need permission. I know you can't give me. He stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without sending. Sarah couldn't give him permission. That was the whole problem. He had to give it to himself, and that felt impossibly hard. His phone buzzed with a message from Laura. Laura Whitman. You seemed off at dinner. Everything okay? Ethan Brooks. My mother thinks I'm moving too fast, that I'm forgetting Sarah. Laura Whitman. Are you? The question was gentle but direct, so typically Laura that Ethan smiled despite everything. Ethan Brooks. Some days I can barely remember her voice. Some days I feel so guilty for being happy that I can't breathe. Some days I wonder if we're making a terrible mistake. Laura Whitman. And other days? Ethan Brooks. Other days I look at you and Mia laughing together and think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Laura Whitman. I have those same doubts, you know. I wake up every morning terrified that I'm using you as a substitute for James, that I'm confusing companionship for love, that I'm going to hurt you or Mia or myself. Ethan Brooks. So what do we do? Laura Whitman. We keep talking. We keep being honest. We trust that we're both smart enough to know the difference between real connection and grief-driven delusion. Ethan Brooks. Are we, though, smart enough? Laura Whitman. I don't know, but I know I'd rather try and fail than never try at all. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but Ethan couldn't shake his mother's words or his own doubts. Over the next few days, he found himself watching Laura more carefully, looking for signs that their relationship was built on grief rather than genuine feeling. But every observation contradicted his fears. The way Laura genuinely enjoyed Mia's company, even when it was exhausting. The way she challenged Ethan's thinking at work without pulling punches. The way she had her own full life, friends, hobbies, interests that had nothing to do with him. This wasn't a woman clinging to him out of loneliness. This was a whole person choosing to build a life with him. Still, the doubts lingered. They came to a head 2 weeks later during a conversation that neither of them planned but both needed. It was a Friday night, and Laura had stayed late after Mia went to bed. They sat on the back porch with wine, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. I need to ask you something, Ethan said, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Laura set down her wine glass, giving him her full attention. Okay. Do you love me, or do you love that I understand your grief? The question hung between them, weighted with all his accumulated fears. Laura was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Can I ask you the same question? That's fair? Because I've been asking myself the exact same thing, Laura admitted, trying to untangle what's real attraction and what's the comfort of being understood. She turned to face him fully. Here's what I think. I think we started as people who understood each other's grief, but that's not why I keep coming back. I keep coming back because you make me laugh, because you challenge me to be better, because watching you with Mia makes me believe in goodness again, because I can be completely myself with you, broken parts and all. And you don't try to fix me or save me or turn me into someone I'm not. That's not the same as love, though. No, Laura agreed. Love is choosing all of that every single day, even when it's hard. Love is wanting someone's happiness, even when it conflicts with your own. Love is being willing to hurt if they hurt and celebrate when they succeed and stand beside them when life gets messy. She reached for his hand. I love you, Ethan. Not because you get my grief, though that helps. I love you because you're kind and patient and funny and real. Because you're an incredible father, Because you've survived the worst thing imaginable and you're still choosing to be brave. Ethan felt tears burning behind his eyes. I love you too, and I'm terrified that loving you means betraying Sarah. It doesn't. Loving me means honoring her by refusing to let her death destroy your capacity for joy. Laura squeezed his hand. Sarah loved you, right? More than anything. Then she would want this for you. Not because I'm special or better, but because you deserve to be loved and happy. Because Mia deserves to see what healthy love looks like. Because life is short and uncertain, and the only real tragedy would be wasting the time we have left. When did you get so wise? Around the same time I realized that living in fear of loss means never really living at all. They sat together in the darkness, hands clasped, both of them crying and laughing and feeling the weight of their choices. So what happens now? Ethan asked. Now we stop questioning whether this is real. Now we trust ourselves and each other. Now we build something together that honors our past without being trapped by it. That sounds terrifying. It is, but I think it might also be worth it. Ethan pulled her close, holding her against his chest while fireflies continued their dance around them. He could feel her heartbeat, steady and strong, proof that both of them were still here and still capable of choosing hope. I want to do this right, he said. I want to introduce you to people as my girlfriend, not just my friend. I want to take you on actual dates. I want Mia to know that you're important to me, to both of us. I want that too. Laura pulled back to look at him. But we need to be smart about work. Maybe it's time to talk to HR, make sure we're not violating any policies. Agreed. And I should probably have a real conversation with my mother instead of just fighting with her over the phone. I should meet her, officially, as your girlfriend, not just someone who happens to be around. The word girlfriend felt strange and wonderful in Ethan's mouth. Are you sure you want to sign up for that? My mother is difficult. So is mine. We can compare notes. They made plans, dinner with his mother the following week, a meeting with HR to disclose their relationship, an actual date for just the two of them. It felt both premature and overdue, like they were simultaneously moving too fast and not fast enough. But as they sat together in the darkness planning their future, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Certainty. This was right. Laura was right. The timing might be imperfect and the path might be complicated, but the destination was worth every obstacle. When Laura finally left that night, Ethan stood on the porch watching her drive away, the same routine they'd developed over months. But this time, instead of going inside immediately, he lingered, looking up at the stars. I'm doing this, Sarah, he said quietly to the night. I'm choosing to be happy again. I hope wherever you are, you understand. I hope you'd approve. I hope you know I'll never forget you, even as I move forward. The stars offered no answer, but Ethan didn't need one. He was learning that sometimes you had to give yourself the permission you were waiting for others to grant. Inside, his phone buzzed with a message. Laura Whitman. Thank you for tonight, for being brave enough to ask the hard questions. Ethan Brooks. Thank you for answering them honestly. Laura Whitman. I meant what I said. I love you. Ethan Brooks. I love you too, and I'm not afraid to say it anymore. Laura Whitman. Good, because I plan to say it often. Ethan smiled, setting his phone down and heading to bed. Tomorrow he would start the difficult conversations, with his mother, with HR, with the people in his life who needed to understand what Laura meant to him. Tomorrow he would begin the work of building a future instead of just surviving the present. But tonight, he would sleep peacefully for the first time in years, knowing he'd chosen love over fear and truth over comfort. And that was enough. The conversation with HR happened on a Tuesday morning, both Ethan and Laura sitting across from Jennifer Martinez, the head of human resources, in her glass-walled office. Jennifer listened without interrupting as they explained the situation, how their relationship had developed, how they'd maintained professional boundaries at work, how they wanted to be transparent about their personal involvement. I appreciate you coming forward, Jennifer said when they finished. Too many people try to hide these things until they become problems. She pulled out a form. Technically, our policy requires disclosure when a direct supervisor is involved in a relationship with a subordinate. Laura, as CEO, you're technically everyone's supervisor. I'm aware, Laura said calmly, which is why I wanted to address this head on. I have no intention of showing Ethan favoritism, but I also recognize the optics could be problematic. Jennifer tapped her pen against the desk, thinking, here's what I propose. Ethan, you currently report to Laura through the marketing department structure. What if we shifted your reporting line to David Chen in operations? You'd still do the same work, but on paper, Laura wouldn't be your direct supervisor. Ethan glanced at Laura, who gave a small nod. That works for me. Good. I'll need you both to sign conflict of interest disclosures, and I'll expect complete professionalism in the office. No PDA, no preferential treatment, no letting personal matters affect business decisions. Of course, Laura said. Then officially, you have my blessing. Jennifer smiled. And unofficially? It's about damn time someone made you smile, Laura. Walking out of HR together, Ethan felt lighter than he had in weeks. One hurdle cleared. Next came the harder one. Dinner with his mother was scheduled for Friday night. Ethan had suggested a restaurant, neutral territory, where his mother's tendency toward dramatic reactions might be tempered by public setting. Laura had agreed immediately, though he could see the tension in her shoulders as Friday approached. What if she hates me? Laura asked Thursday night while helping Mia with a science project about the solar system. She won't hate you. But what if she does? Ethan looked up from the papier-mâché planet he was attempting to construct. Then we deal with it. Together. But Laura, my mother's opinion doesn't change how I feel about you. It matters, though. She's Mia's grandmother. She's important to you. You're important to me, too. Mia looked up from painting Jupiter. Grandma will love Miss Laura. Everybody loves Miss Laura. The confidence of childhood. Ethan wished he could borrow some of it. Friday arrived too quickly. Ethan's mother had chosen an Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and hushed conversations. They arrived 5 minutes early, but Patricia Brooks was already seated, her posture rigid and her expression carefully neutral. Mom. Ethan bent to kiss her cheek. This is Laura Whitman. Laura, my mother, Patricia. Laura extended her hand with a warm smile. It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Brooks. Ethan speaks about you often. Patricia shook her hand briefly. I wish I could say the same. I've heard very little about you until recently. The first shot fired. Ethan felt Laura tense beside him, but her smile didn't waver. That's understandable. Things developed rather organically between us. They ordered drinks, wine for the women, water for Ethan, who was driving, and studied menus in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Patricia set hers down and looked directly at Laura. How long after your husband died did you start seeing Ethan? Mom, Ethan started, but Laura touched his hand. It's okay. She met Patricia's gaze steadily. James died 6 years ago. I wasn't looking for a relationship when I met Ethan. It just happened. Convenient that it happened with someone else who was grieving. Makes everything easier, doesn't it? Shared trauma as foundation for romance? Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, but Laura remained calm. You're right that shared experience brought us together initially, Laura said. We understood each other's grief in a way most people couldn't. But that's not why we fell in love. We fell in love because we genuinely enjoy each other's company, because we make each other laugh, because we want the same things in life. And what about Sarah? Where does my daughter-in-law fit in this convenient new arrangement? Sarah is Mia's mother and Ethan's late wife. Nothing will change that. I'm not trying to replace her or erase her memory. I'm just trying to build a future with the man I love and his daughter. Patricia's expression cracked slightly. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your son move on when you're still drowning in grief? To see him happy with someone new when you can barely remember what happiness feels like? The raw pain in her voice shifted something in the atmosphere. Laura leaned forward, her voice gentle. I do know, actually. My parents struggled terribly after James died. My mother couldn't understand how I could go back to work, how I could function, how I could smile or laugh. She thought I wasn't grieving properly because I wasn't falling apart the way she was. Laura paused. Everyone processes loss differently, Mrs. Brooks. Ethan choosing to move forward doesn't mean he's forgotten Sarah or that he didn't love her enough. It means he's doing what she would have wanted, living his life and raising their daughter with joy instead of just surviving. You didn't know Sarah. You can't speak for what she would have wanted. You're right, but I know grief. And I know that the people we love don't want us to spend the rest of our lives as monuments to their memory. They want us to keep living. Patricia was crying now, tears running down her face unchecked. I miss her so much, and watching Ethan with you makes it feel like she's dying all over again. Ethan reached across the table to take his mother's hand. Sarah will always be part of our family, Mom. But she's been gone for almost 3 years. I can't put my life on hold forever waiting for you to be ready. I know. Patricia wiped at her eyes. I know that logically. Emotionally is harder. Then maybe we start there, Laura said softly. With being honest about how hard this is, instead of fighting about whether it's right or wrong. I'm not asking you to be happy about this relationship, Mrs. Brooks. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. The dinner that followed was still tense, but the sharp edges had softened. Patricia asked questions about Laura's work, her background, her intentions. Laura answered honestly, never defensive, always respectful. By dessert, Patricia had even smiled once or twice. As they stood to leave, Patricia surprised them both by pulling Laura into a brief hug. I can't promise I'll be easy about this, she said, but I can see that you make my son happy, and Ethan tells me Mia adores you. Mia is wonderful. You raised an incredible son, and he's raising an incredible daughter. He had a good teacher. Patricia's voice broke. Sarah was the best thing that ever happened to this family. I don't doubt that for a second, Laura said, and I promise I'll honor her memory by taking care of the family she left behind. In the car afterward, Ethan reached for Laura's hand. That was brutal. I'm sorry. Don't be. She's protecting her family. I respect that. You were amazing in there, patient and kind even when she was being difficult. Laura squeezed his hand. I understood where she was coming from. When James died, I was angry at everyone who kept living their lives normally. How dare they be happy when my world had ended? It took me years to realize that their happiness wasn't an insult to my grief. When did you get so wise about all this? Around the same time I fell in love with a single father and his butterfly-obsessed daughter. They drove in comfortable silence for a while before Laura spoke again. Ethan, I've been thinking about something. What's that? I know we're taking things slow and being careful, but I want you to know that I'm all in. This isn't casual for me. When I think about my future, you and Mia are in every version of it. Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. I feel the same way. Good, because I was thinking, maybe it's time to make this official in front of Mia. Not pushing for anything too fast, but acknowledging what we are to each other. What do you have in mind? Let me take you both on a proper date, somewhere special. And we can talk to Mia about what this relationship means, what she can expect going forward. The idea both excited and terrified Ethan. She's 6. How do you explain adult relationships to a 6-year-old? Honestly and simply, we tell her we care about each other, that we want to spend more time together as a family, and that nothing about loving me means we love her mother any less. Okay, let's do it. They planned the outing for the following Saturday, a day at the aquarium followed by dinner at Mia's favorite pizza place. Laura picked them up in the morning, bringing hot chocolate for Mia and coffee for Ethan, and the three of them drove into the city singing along to songs on the radio. The aquarium was crowded but magical, full of wonder that made Mia's eyes go wide. Laura held Mia's hand through the tunnel with sharks swimming overhead, and Ethan captured a photo of them both looking up in awe, their faces bathed in blue light. At lunch in the aquarium cafe, surrounded by families and field trips and the ambient noise of happy chaos, Laura reached across the table to take Mia's hand. Mia, sweetheart, can we talk about something important? Mia looked up from her fish-shaped chicken nuggets. Okay. You know how your daddy and I have been spending a lot of time together? Yeah, because you're friends. We are friends, but we're also something more than friends. We care about each other in a special way, like how mommies and daddies care about each other. Mia processed this, her young face serious. Does that mean you're going to be my new mommy? Laura glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragement. No one will ever replace your mommy, Laura said gently. She'll always be your mom, and she'll always be important. But your daddy and I love each other, and we both love you. So we're going to be spending even more time together, like a family. Will you live with us? Not right away, but maybe someday, if everyone is comfortable with that. Mia thought about this for a long moment. Then she looked at Ethan. Daddy, do you love Miss Laura? I do, sweetheart, very much. And Miss Laura, do you love Daddy? I do, Mia. And I love you too. Then it's okay. Mia returned to her chicken nuggets with the matter-of-factness of childhood. Can we see the penguins next? Just like that, the conversation that Ethan had been dreading for weeks was over. No drama, no tears, just acceptance and a request to see penguins. Laura met his eyes across the table, her expression a mixture of relief and joy. They'd crossed another threshold, and Mia had met them there with open arms. The months that followed fell into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. Laura began staying over more frequently, keeping clothes in Ethan's guest room and joining them for breakfast before work. She attended Mia's school events and parent-teacher conferences. She integrated seamlessly into their lives, not replacing Sarah, but creating her own space beside the memory of her. Ethan's mother remained wary, but civil, gradually warming to Laura through weekly dinners where they all made an effort. Patricia started sharing stories about Sarah, and Laura listened with genuine interest, never threatened by the past that had shaped this family. At work, the restructured reporting relationship worked perfectly. Ethan and Laura maintained strict professionalism during business hours, though their colleagues noticed the change in Laura's demeanor, softer, more accessible, occasionally caught smiling for no apparent reason. 6 months after that first accidental text message, Ethan stood in his kitchen making breakfast while Laura helped Mia braid her hair at the table. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, and the radio played softly in the background. It was an ordinary Saturday morning, completely unremarkable except for the way it made Ethan's chest swell with gratitude. This was family. Not the family he'd planned, not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and precious built from the wreckage of grief. "Daddy?" Mia called. "Miss Laura says we should all go to the park today. The butterflies are out." "That sounds perfect." Laura caught his eye and smiled, and in that smile was everything. Acknowledgement of how far they'd come, gratitude for the courage it took to get here, hope for everything still ahead. That afternoon at the park, while Mia chased butterflies through the grass, Ethan found himself standing beside Laura, watching his daughter play. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "Always dangerous." "I'm serious. I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next for us." Laura turned to look at him, curiosity and something deeper in her expression. "What did you have in mind?" Ethan took a breath, gathering courage. This wasn't planned, wasn't rehearsed, but it felt right in a way that transcended logic or timing. "I want to build a life with you, not someday, not eventually, but now. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Mia to have you in her life permanently, not just as my girlfriend, but as someone committed to this family." Laura's eyes widened. "Ethan, I'm not saying we have to get married tomorrow. I know we both have complicated feelings about that. But I want you to move in. I want us to be a family in every real sense of the word." "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything." He took her hands. "You've already become essential to us, Laura. Mia loves you. I love you. And I don't want to waste any more time being cautious when we could be building something beautiful." Laura was crying now, but her smile was radiant. "I love you too, both of you, so much." "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes. Absolutely yes." Mia chose that moment to run over, breathless and grass-stained. "Why is Miss Laura crying? Did something bad happen?" "No, sweetheart," Ethan said, pulling her into a hug alongside Laura. "Something very good just happened. Miss Laura is going to live with us." Mia's shriek of joy startled nearby birds into flight. She threw her arms around Laura's waist. "Really? Forever?" "Forever," Laura confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. They stood there in the park, 3 people who'd found each other through accident and grief and courage, choosing to be a family. Around them, life continued, other families playing, dogs running, the world moving forward with casual indifference to small miracles. But for Ethan, this moment felt like the culmination of a journey that had started with a single mistaken text message. 3 words sent to the wrong person that had somehow led him exactly where he needed to be. The weeks that followed were a flurry of activity. Laura put her house on the market, though she kept James's photos and the meaningful pieces that held memory. They combined households carefully, making space for Laura's things while preserving the home Ethan and Mia had built. The unfinished nursery from Laura's house became a studio, a space where she could work on hobbies she'd neglected for years. Mia helped decorate what became Laura's office in their home, insisting on butterfly stickers and a photo of the 3 of them from the aquarium. She adapted to the new arrangement with the resilience of childhood, delighted to have Laura there for bedtime stories and morning pancakes. Ethan's mother came to dinner one evening and found Laura in Sarah's old apron, cooking in what had been Sarah's kitchen. Patricia froze in the doorway, and Ethan held his breath, waiting for the explosion. Instead, his mother smiled sadly. "Sarah would have liked you wearing that. She always said that apron should be used, not stored away like a relic." "Would you like it back?" Laura asked gently. "I don't want to overstep." "No, keep it, use it, make new memories in it." Patricia's eyes were bright with tears. Sarah loved this family enough to want them to keep living. I'm finally starting to understand that. 3 months after Laura moved in, they established new traditions while honoring old ones. They still visited Sarah's grave on her birthday, all 3 of them bringing flowers and sharing stories. They still looked at photos and talked about her openly, but they also created new memories. Friday movie nights, Sunday morning farmers market trips, holiday traditions that belonged uniquely to their blended family. One evening, while tucking Mia into bed, the little girl looked up at Ethan with serious eyes. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Always, sweetheart." "Do you think Mommy knows about Laura? About us being a family now?" The question stole Ethan's breath. He sat on the edge of Mia's bed, choosing his words carefully. "I think if there's any part of Mommy that still exists somewhere, she knows. And I think she'd be happy that we're happy." "I think so too." Mia hugged her elephant closer. "I told Mommy about Laura. In my head, I mean. I told her that Laura's really nice and she makes you smile and she helps me with homework and she's teaching me to garden. I hope that's okay." Ethan felt tears burning behind his eyes. "That's more than okay, baby. That's beautiful." "Good. Because I love Laura. Not the same way I love Mommy, but still a lot." "You can love them both. Hearts are big enough for that." "I know. You told me that before, remember?" "I remember." After Mia fell asleep, Ethan found Laura in the kitchen making tea. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Mia told me she loves you." Laura set down her mug, turning in his arms. "She told me that too a few weeks ago. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. She also said she talks to Sarah in her head, tells her about you. How do you feel about that?" "Grateful. That Mia found a way to include both of you in her life. That she doesn't see loving you as betraying her mother." He paused. "And grateful to Sarah, wherever she is, for giving me 12 years of love that taught me how to do this. How to be brave enough to love again." Laura cupped his face in her hands. "I'm grateful to James for the same reason. The love we lost doesn't diminish what we've found. It makes it richer." They stood in the kitchen holding each other, 2 people who'd learned that endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to let them. A year after that first accidental message, Ethan found himself back at the same park where he'd asked Laura to build a life with him. This time, the whole family was there. Mia, Laura, his mother, Laura's parents, close friends who'd watched their journey unfold. They'd planned a simple celebration, nothing formal or traditional, just a gathering of the people who mattered most to acknowledge the family they'd become. Ethan stood with Laura under an oak tree while Mia bounced excitedly beside them. No officiant, no ceremony, just words they'd written for each other. "A year ago," Ethan began, "I sent the wrong message to the wrong person at the wrong time. Or maybe it was exactly the right message to exactly the right person at exactly the right time. Either way, that mistake led me here. To you, to us, to a family I never thought I'd have again." Laura's eyes were bright with tears. "You taught me that grief doesn't have to be the end of the story, that it's possible to honor the past while building a future, that love doesn't replace love, it multiplies it. I can't promise we won't have hard days," Ethan continued. I can't promise we won't mess up or struggle or have moments of doubt. But I can promise that I'll show up for you and Mia every single day. That I'll choose this family, this love, this life we're building together. And I promise the same, Laura said. To be present, to be honest, to be brave enough to keep choosing joy even when it's scary. Mia tugged on Laura's hand. Can I say something? Laura knelt down. Of course, sweetheart. I'm really happy we're a family, all of us together. Mia looked at the sky. I think Mommy's happy too. There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Ethan pulled both Laura and Mia into his arms, holding them close while their chosen family applauded and cheered. Later, after the celebration had wound down and Mia had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Ethan carried his daughter inside while Laura followed with the leftover cake. They moved through the house in comfortable silence, a choreography they'd perfected over months of shared living. After tucking Mia in, they stood together on the back porch looking at the stars. Do you ever think about that night? Laura asked. When you sent that message? All the time. How terrified I was. How certain I was that I'd ruined everything. Best mistake you ever made. Best accident I ever had. Laura leaned against him, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, marveling at how natural this felt. How right. I love you, he said simply. I love you too. Both of you. We love you too. They stood there under the stars, this family built from broken pieces and brave choices, proof that the worst moments could lead to the best outcomes if you were willing to take the risk. Somewhere in the house, Mia slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she was loved by a mother she'd lost and a woman who'd chosen to love her anyway. Somewhere in the city, Sarah's memory lived on in photos and stories and the daughter she'd left behind. Somewhere in the past, James's kindness had shaped Laura into someone capable of opening her heart again. And here, in the present, Ethan held the future in his arms and felt nothing but gratitude. 3 words. Wrong recipient, right outcome. Life, he'd learned, had a way of working out when you were brave enough to let it. When you chose to see accidents as opportunities and mistakes as doorways to something better. The mistaken text that had nearly sent him into panic had instead given him everything he hadn't known he was missing. It had taught him that grief and joy could coexist, that loving again didn't mean forgetting what was lost, that families could be built in unexpected ways, and love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. As he stood on his back porch with Laura in his arms and his daughter sleeping safely inside, Ethan Brooks felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because the pain was gone or the grief had disappeared, but because he'd learned to carry both while still making room for happiness. Because he'd found someone who understood that hearts could break and heal simultaneously. Because he'd chosen courage over fear and built a family from the pieces of 2 shattered lives. And it had all started with 3 simple words sent to the wrong person. I miss you, he'd typed into the darkness. And the darkness had answered back with light.